Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here, and I'm with Michael Sands. This is the Outsourced PM podcast show. Michael, we've done so many episodes so far. How are you feeling about it, or what's the feedback been?
I still can't believe how many podcasts we've done on this, and I don't think there's any other company out there, any other podcast that specializes on outsourcing and has done it to this level. The feedback we get is amazing. I meet people all the time who say, "Hey, I've been listening to that podcast, and I've changed how we treat and operate our virtual assistants, how they employ virtual assistants." Even if you just try to take away one thing from these podcasts, each podcast, you are that far in front from where you were when you started.
Absolutely. And what I love about, I know that employing virtual assistants to do those mundane tasks that really bogs property managers down is such a freedom that when you're able to successfully outsource those tasks, you move to that part of your business of just set and forget. Because Michael, we know there's a massive staffing crisis going on at the moment. Why would you want to give your low-end tasks to experienced, quality, really hard to get, nearly impossible to get staff, when you could be giving those to your virtual assistants and allowing your property managers, your valuable property manager, to focus on the high-end stuff? There's actually 30 different things you can be outsourcing right now and not placing on your valuable, really hard to get, nearly impossible to source property managers. Just go to teamsbydesigntasks.com. That's teamsbydesigntasks.com for a list of 30 different things. Please go and do that, because I think moving into this era of the amazing staffing crisis, it's not going to get easier. It's going to get worse and worse. You've got to look at, okay, what tasks can I actually put onto another model using virtual assistants, and your hard to get, nearly impossible to get, expensive quality staff just do that high-end stuff. And they're going to love you for it too, because you're making their job so much easier. Now, today, we're actually talking about 6 things that you don't know or you didn't know about virtual assistants from the Philippines that you ought to know. So, Michael, I think we've had a little bit of fun putting together this list. And it's true. There's a lot of people that just, they know about virtual assistants, and they probably know that, the Philippines is a favorable place. But well first, let's just, before we get into it, why the Philippines? Why is that country the better one? Because you've also looked at a number of other countries and tried them out. Why have you settled on the Philippines, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of reasons, but their level of customer service, efficiency in English, their mannerisms, just who they are. Like, they're beautiful people. It's a comparable time zone to us. They're flexible. When I ask people, what do you think about a virtual assistant, or what comes to your mind, they think it's like a magic, a piece of magic where they send a task off somewhere into cyberspace and then it comes back to them. But a lot of people don't realize, there's a whole world there. There's this whole other beautiful country with all these beautiful, amazing people there, and they have lives. They're professionals. A lot of people don't realize that most people in the Philippines are university educated.
They are.
They don't realize that English is like basically the most spoken language in the Philippines.
Yep.
They don't realize there's like 100-odd million people in the Philippines. They don't realize that Manila is about the 4th largest city in the world.
I know. I haven't seen it, but the photos of you and Dennis being there, the place is like huge.
It's and it is so diverse. You've got beautiful islands there. You've got high rise in certain areas. There is so much going on there that most people in the countries that we deal in, Australia, New Zealand, UK, even people in America that are using virtual assistants, they don't realize what's actually happening there. They've never been there. They wouldn't have seen photos other than from when, people like Dennis and myself have shown photos on social media or the companies they're working with. they don't realize that, what happens when they go home. They don't realize, what's most important to them. I would probably, that's generalizing, I'd probably say that 90% of people that deal with the Philippines or want to deal with the Philippines don't realize the ins and outs there, and then maybe 10% realize.
And people don't realize is that they work a lot for the Americans as well. The Americans on the other side of the planet in a time zone that's not comparable to theirs. And the Americans know the Philippines is where you get the work done, and they still use them a lot, though of course they do use a lot of Mexican virtual assistants as well. But Michael, just very quickly, well, what are the other countries that you've tried that didn't work? You talked about the Philippines that does, but what didn't work?
Yeah, look, we tried, we've tried South America. I guess time zone becomes an issue. Understanding the British English as opposed to American English, it was a big issue there. I've tried, India, but I found dealing with India was a bit too transactional. I didn't know who I was dealing with. You might sign up one person, but there's 10 people that are helping that one person, and you don't know who it is that you're working with. I was concerned about security data breaches with certain countries. I've tried like Eastern and Western Europe. I've tried project-based for like creative work, admin work, voice work. And I found that collectively the Philippines was law of averages, kind of did everything quite well, and they could replicate it to a good standard. And obviously things fail when the training isn't adequate. And, we've touched on that in other podcasts that we've done. But you'll get out of it what you put into it. And I find that a lot of people, when they're dealing with, freelancing or a virtual assistant, they're not always clear with their instructions. Communication breaks down. People go AWOL, and then, you're starting all over again. Philippines is probably, like we said, it's the best place that I've experienced being able to deal with, and they're just amazing people, beautiful humans. And as you know, Darren, we look for humans is one of the top characteristics when we employ people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love working with Filipino VAs, have done since 2007. Let's get into the session, 6 things that you don't know about Filipino virtual assistants, but you should. The first one is their attitude towards studying videos. And what does that mean? And why does that benefit us in Australia, Michael?
There's not too many subjects out there that aren't on YouTube or on some online platform. And the people in the Philippines, they use video recordings to study and research. It's like the Bible for them on education. They'll type in a subject, a topic. We give our team access to Udemy also, which is one of the largest online universities where people can go and put their own courses up and run them. In fact, Darren, we had one of our team members who knew nothing about ClickFunnels whatsoever, nothing, and went online through Udemy and YouTube. Darlene went on and learned how to break it down and structure it and workflows and everything. So
yeah. Anything can be learned from videos. And so for everyone listening out there, so for example, a property management task, let's say you're showing how to enter a lease renewal on your property management software. Well, you can screen record that. You can screen record it 2 ways, which is on Zoom, which is the platform we're using right now. You can record your screen that turns what you can then screen share it. So you can then screen share it to your property management software, whatever that may be. And you can then show people how to enter XYZ into that, whether it's a lease renewal or entering a new owner's details or changing details or whatever. How to do a file note, all of that stuff. And you can record that on Zoom with a share screen. You can also, with using Loom, that's LOOM.com. If you're searching online, just go Loom videos. Otherwise, you're going to find the big device that makes clothing. And you can screen record. And so it always records, whether it's Zoom or whether it's Loom, recording what you see and what you say and turns it into an MP4 video. Now, if it's Loom, it'll automatically load it up to the internet, give you a link. Then all you have to do is give that link to your virtual assistant or create a Google spreadsheet where you put those links in there. And now you can go, well, this is how you do a lease renewal on the system and put the link there. Now, if you're going to load from Zoom to YouTube, make sure your link is unlisted. So you then get a link, and only the person that has the link can actually watch it. It's not public, and you can put that link, that YouTube link, into your spreadsheet. So you can develop a library of your tasks, how they're done in the way that you want them done. That virtual assistant will then go and look at and study, and you don't need to train that task ever again. They train from video. But of course, the culture that people have, Michael, towards wanting to, very happy to study from video. In contrast, how does the Australian worker stand up against learning from video in an office, a typical office worker? What's the norm?
It'd be shunned, Darren. Like
they won't do it. They won't learn from video. They won't study a video on how to do a task. That's just the truth. And so you're then reliant on having to use your valuable time to show that person, and hopefully they remember it. So, but a video, it's recorded. You can go back to it over and over and over again.
I see this as one of the biggest roadblocks with officers, where, you say to them, do a recording of how you do your process, your nuances, because fundamentally property management is the same across the country, but how you do your notes, how you want things saved and stored, and how you want to do it, it's got to be recorded. But Darren, like when you go to record for a virtual assistant, don't think about it like that. Think about you are recording your office processes. There are so many offices out there that do not have any processes recorded or written in place, or not updated at all, and they're relying off brain power, memory. And when someone starts physically in their office, they're then physically showing them. When you're recording, this is my advice, when you're recording step by step on how you want things done, entered into your system, your processes, don't think of it as, oh, I've got to train a VA. You are recording your office processes. This is the Bible to the business. This means that if you're hit by a bus, anyone can step in and help.
Yeah, correct. And with whether you got photos on screen or videos on screen, or even a video out at a property, you could compile the ABC video library of how you do property management if you spend enough time on it. And then you only have to show those videos to virtual assistants. So just know virtual assistants will be very, very happy to study those videos and learn how to do it from that video, and they'll master it. Don't you worry. As long as your video is correct. All right, your video is correct, they will learn it. But of course, Australian workers won't bend to that, and they just won't. And so that leaves you very, very frustrated. So that's one of the awesome things that we love about Filipino virtual assistants. The culture is we will learn from video. So, all right, next one is family, Michael. So the next thing that we want people to know, which they probably don't know, is the importance of family. Tell us about that.
Well, I find family is the number one value. And like when we ask people in the Philippines what's important to them, why do they work, why do they do all this, it's because they're trying to provide for their family. And it could be a generational, it could be providing for their parents and their kids, their great-grandparents, their aunties and uncles. And so work is very important to them. But you find that when they're working in an office, so pre-pandemic, some would be traveling 4 or 5 hours each way every day just to work, to provide.
Michael, I'm going to stop you there, because the last event that you did in Manila, where you had, I think we had 70 potential virtual assistants in the room, that you were teaching them Australian slang and Australian property management culture, New Zealand culture and UK culture, so we can then pick and choose people out of the room that would be suitable for virtual assistants. You asked a question and you said, how long, some of you people here that want to become virtual assistants, you're working regular jobs where you've got to travel in crazy Manila traffic during the day, how many hours are you doing? What were some of the figures that you heard, Michael? Because I was online watching that event. What was some of the crazy figures that were nominated that people are willing to do just to work?
2 hours each way, 4 hours each way, hour and a half each way. And, the mode of transportation, Darren, isn't fun. It's not like you're getting into a proper car. You're getting into things like jeepneys, which are miniature buses with open window spaces, and like a tuk-tuk in a vehicle, in a van, for those who know what a tuk-tuk is. And, they're jammed in there like sardines. It's not a pleasant experience. And they might be traveling, from north to south or either way. It's not fun. And so when you ask them why you're doing it. It's family. Otherwise, why would you do it? Right? You're providing for family. So understanding what their motivation is, why they want to work from home and not work in an office. It is for their family.
But then you get 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours a day back that they don't have to, breathe polluted air or be in that crazy traffic or all the anxiety that goes with it. That's a real gift, and people really want that now, don't they? After COVID, they don't want to go back into that traffic. So virtual assistant work is very popular.
1 hour a day each way, so 2 hours a day is, one working month that they lose just on travel.
Yeah, and they're willing to do it, and it's 1.5 and 2 hours each way. A lot of these people do, and that's just normal to them. So they give that back. They can then give that to their family. You're going to have happy virtual assistants wanting to work for you. So that's really important to know. All right, next one is the number 3 thing that we want you to know about Filipino VAs is their cultures. They just want to please you, as a worker. Tell us about that one, Michael.
Yeah, I guess none of them really want to let anybody down. They, it's a very customer service friendly country. They believe in reciprocity. If I look after you, Darren, you're to look after me. They're very welcoming. I think we've said it before when I had Dennis over there the first time. We had an Airbnb and we were doing some training in that Airbnb, and it was going to start at 9 o'clock. We told them 9 o'clock. They came at about 10:30. As they walked in, it was like, The Hobbit, everyone came in, they all bought food and they all went into the kitchen, and Dennis and I were still sitting out in the living room looking at our watch, looking at each other, what's going on, when are we going to start training? All of a sudden they come out of the kitchen with filling the table full of food, and we're like, we've got to start training now. Yes, but we eat first. And then we didn't start until 12 o'clock, the training, because they wanted to sit down, break bread, be really hospitable. It's the same reflection when they're on the phones helping people. They just want to help. And where I guess that point of frustration is if they don't know how to help, like if the instructions aren't clear enough, the video instructions aren't obvious enough, and they get stuck and then they can't reach you in the office, it's a hard point for them. They just want to please.
Yeah, and that culture, again, another tick of why you've chosen the Philippines as a place where we source virtual assistants and not other countries, because it's just another thing that really adds to getting the right person.
And think about this also, Darren, that the Philippines pre-pandemic provided over 25% of all nurses that were abroad. 25% of the world's nurses were provided by people in the Philippines, outside of the Philippines. Their bedside mannerism is just splendid. I mean, when we were in the Philippines recently, we had one of our kids, Miguel, was in the emergency, the Philippines, and the bedside manner and the women in there were just tremendous.
Yeah, it says a lot. It's part of the culture. And again, why you want to choose a virtual assistant from the Philippines. Okay, next one is a very, very process-driven order takers. Now, that's a good thing and can be a bad thing. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think largely this was ingrained from the American influence. The American influence, I feel that there wasn't as much humanness in a lot of in the way the American processes are. It's very much matter-of-fact process. But in Australia, New Zealand, UK, they want that humanality to it. They want the empathy, the sympathy, not just their, order taking. It is a good thing that they're process driven. It just means that if your instructions are clear, that process should be followed. If it's not followed, there's a breakdown in communication somewhere. And step-by-step workflow and processes. It's a good thing, Darren. That
it is a good thing, but let's talk about using your initiative, because I've experienced some virtual assistants that just have a lack of thinking for themselves. And so how do you overcome that issue with a VA?
Yeah, there's definitely a percentage out there that if they hit a wall or don't understand, they'll go silent and not engage. I mean, we encourage everyone to have daily meetings in the morning, setting out what the agenda is for the day, what roadblocks have you got, how can I help with each client. there is also a smaller percentage of those that are very, very outside the box thinkers. They can, and Darren, they rise to the leadership positions, right? When they take the initiative and they can think laterally. But those that kind of get stuck, if they can't access you, they'll go AWOL. So clear lines of communication, very important.
Yep. And I think, again, everyone, a lot of 80% of property management is process driven, task driven, the same thing over and over and over and over again. You can record it, you can put it into a task, you can make a video on it. If you can make the same task in a video that's done over and over and over again the same way, why are you giving it to your property management staff? You should be giving it to virtual assistants, because that is their culture. They're just going to make it happen. Again, go to teamsbydesigntasks.com. That's teamsbydesigntasks.com for 30 of those process driven type tasks that you can be easily outsourcing. Alrighty, so we've talked so far about the culture of that they will study videos. That's what they prefer. Of course, the importance of family. We've talked about, well, the culture is they really want to please you. They're very good at customer service. They're just lovely people. And that's very much ingrained into who they are in a country, which is great. We've talked about that they're process driven. Now, also, what about the next one is one thing that people probably don't know is the American influence on the Philippines. They're very Americanized, they're very westernized. And Michael, how is that a good thing? And perhaps what are some things that we need to look out for?
Well, is it a good thing? I guess one of the concerns people, I guess, in Australia have is when they work with someone in the Philippines that the accent is quite thick American, but they were taught by American speaking teachers. The American accents. They were brought up on American sitcoms. The English speaking shows were all American. They didn't have British influence there. I mean, USA bought the Philippines back from Spain, I think, for about $20 million some time ago. And, America had their military bases in the Philippines. And, so it's very, very ingrained there. I find that, the American influence is positive in some regards because it does help with the process-driven nature of it. It does help with global awareness. I find that people in the Philippines are more globally aware than those in America. I apologize to any of our American friends that are listening to this. I mean, I think that the people in the Philippines can identify more places outside of America than people in America. So they have cultural awareness, country awareness.
But they watch the American movies, they watch the American TV shows, they watch American, on YouTube. It's all very westernized, which means for us in Australia, New Zealand, UK, they get us. They understand us, as opposed to maybe a person that's working in Cambodia or Laos or places like that, which culture is completely different.
Yeah, huge Western influence, massive Western. I mean, you just got to walk around the towns and the villages there, a huge Western influence.
Yeah. So that's really important, everyone. We need someone that's culturally close to our, westernization. The other thing is you just got to be aware that they're very used to American spelling, particularly with their emails. So, that we need to adjust them to British spelling, but that's all part of the Teams by Design experience as well. We're very clear on that about British spelling. All right, moving on. The last one, Michael, is what you nominated, is that they like to have livestock or farm animals. Tell us about that. Why and how can that or creep in with a virtual assistant? How can that affect us here in Australia?
Definitely one thing that people won't know about a lot of people in the Philippines is that, yes, a lot of them may have some form of livestock, from a rooster to a cow to chickens. And it's a question that you need to ask your assistants when you are going through the interview process. Do you have any livestock? The amount of interviews that we have had, Darren, and, you'll be deep in conversation and then all of a sudden you'll hear a cockle-doodle-doo. Or a moo.
You hear the pigs or the cow in the background.
And there's that awkward silence as though, that's familiar background noise to them. So they just kind of think, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or it's the... And so you've got to be aware of the traffic noise and farm animal noise in the background for that worker. And Michael, how do you sort that out when you're recruiting with Teams by Design?
I mean, like, we have that minimum standard. So noise cancelling headphones, and we have QA that listens to all the calls that we make and receive. And sometimes, Darren, at the interview stage, there's no noise there. And you ask, do you have livestock or noise in the background that will affect you? And they'll say no. And then, we sometimes pick it up when we're doing our QA, which is important while we have QA. Or they might, so there was one time, Darren, and they said, no, I don't have any animals at all. And then they were great. There was no noise. And one time we were listening to QA and there was a cow in the background. And we said, oh, you can't have the cow. We have to do something about it, or we'll take you away from this client. And I said, it's not my cow, it's my neighbour's. So
you asked the right question.
I asked the right question the wrong way.
Yes, correct.
You ask, do you have any livestock? Or do your neighbours have any livestock? Are there any noises in the background that may pop up while you're on phone calls? And I did an onboarding video yesterday, Darren, and it was what to expect when having an interview with us. And one of the things in there is, if you've got kids, you've got TV, you've got fans, you've got livestock, just let us know, because that'll help us understand where we're going to place you with the role that you've got. Because, Darren, if I'm speaking to a team member and they're doing admin work for me, not on the phone, to clients, I'm okay if there's a bit of background noise there. It doesn't matter, because they're not speaking to a client. But if they're speaking to your tenants or your landlords or your tradies, yeah, you want silence in the background. There's software we have that minimizes all that. But be mindful. My advice is to everyone, be mindful that there's a high chance someone will have some form of livestock or animal in the background.
Yeah, but because Teams by Design have people working from home, they're not working in call centers, and they're not sitting on top of each other like battery hens as well, which is what a lot of these other virtual assistant companies do. They just sit people so close, such a terrible working environment like a sweatshop, but the noise and the din around them doing their work and talking is horrendous. I mean, we've had calls from people from call centers and the noise in the background is horrendous, but when they're working from home, as long as we look after those other noises which can occur, it's a very suitable type of background to have with the type of things that we want them to do. That's, of course, if they're talking to our clients. Naturally, or Michael, people probably thinking, well, I don't want a Filipino speaking to my clients, but what with the recruitment process, you actually allow people to listen to their English proficiency as well before any choice is made. Is that correct?
Well, they meet the person that we assign, so they get to see firsthand what they sound like. But when we do our recruitment, yes, we have to be provided with a video file and an audio file.
Yeah,
and we listen to that. That's one of the first things I listen to. I listen to how they pronounce certain letters, and I'm probably harsher than most. But we take all that into consideration.
And I think you said that 100 people that apply to work with Teams by Design, only 2 make it out at the bottom end. So we do actually have a podcast, everyone, on the 11 different checkpoints of the recruitment process that Teams by Design, I think that's episode 14 from Guess, but go into there, have a look at the episodes there. Michael, what can people do right now if they want to speak to you about the possibilities, or they're looking for another virtual assistant, or they just want to ask you questions about restructure? What do they do?
Go to teamsbydesign.com, contact us, and then we will come back to you once you send us a little message. Let us know any questions you've got, and we'll book a time in and we'll have a catch up.
Cool. Well, Michael, another excellent podcast episode done. And thanks, everyone. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Darren.